All right, everybody, welcome to the Philanthropic Podcast. We are super excited for today's episode. We've got Matt, the BYU fan legend, here on the show today. So we're excited to hear more on his story and dive into, his life and his future and other things like that. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we've got a cool show for you today. Excited to have Matt on. So how you doing today, Matt?
Good. Grateful to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. Obviously, you and I have been spending a good amount of time together. You've been beating me in disc golf and all the things down that road, but it's been fun, getting to know you better and spend time with you and just hear your story, right? You have a story that has really hit me hard, and knowing that anyone can be in a hard situation, right? And at any point in your life, you can be, you have highs and lows in your life, right? In a lot of ways. And so it's been inspiring to work with you and see that, even maybe when you've been in lows or when you've been in the highs in your life, like you've always been the kind of person that gives back and helps people and takes care of people. It's in your nature, right? And so I'm excited to dive more into that, as that's the nature of this show, right? We want people to give back. We want people to have that burning feeling of, hey, I need to do something. I need to help. I need to make the world a better place. And I believe that you've done that in a lot of ways. And I believe that you have the capacity, ability, and personality to completely change people's lives and help people through tough situations as well. So excited to dive into that a little bit too.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's kind of just start from the beginning, right? I know a lot of people have seen the video. You and I, we went to a BYU football game. We had a great time, great win. BYU's having a great season so far, right? 6-0. So we'll keep following those, watching the games. So maybe you're just, good luck for the Cougs now that you're back going to games and things again. But it could be so. But let's kind of go back. Let's go back and I think people would love to hear your story and kind of know. We've talked a little bit about it. You've given me some details. Some of the videos showcase that. But like, who's Matt? What was kind of like your life been up to this point?
Sure.
Right?
Sure. I was just like any other guy, I did high school, went to college, got my degree, I had a son, helped, lived with him, raised him.
Yeah.
I was in the computer industry for 15 years plus, just here in Salt Lake as well as in Washington State.
Yeah.
And just like I had hobbies, girlfriend, all this stuff, just normal. I'd never really had any issues with stability or anything like that, with not having my own home, my own car, my own, this, that, the other, good jobs, just education, all of that, no problem. But just in the last couple of years, especially with COVID and with mental health and being diagnosed with schizophrenia, it's mental health. It's COVID really kind of threw a, wrench into everything for everyone, I think. And I think most of us weren't really prepared to be locked, in our own heads for that long. And that can cause serious, mental health issues. And it really highlighted some of that within myself. And I'm grateful that our society is beginning to, look at these things, that some of them are being classified to the point where the government is stepping in and identifying things like that as a disability, that homelessness, and which goes, hand in hand with drug addiction, or drug or alcohol addiction, it's typically mental health.
Yeah.
That's from what I've seen is just mental health, and mine just faltered after I was in Washington and I was taking care of a friend. Let's step back. I was living in Utah in a home out here in Harriman, and had just separated from a girlfriend, and she moved on, and I met this woman on Facebook, and we started chatting back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
She was disabled. She had cerebral palsy, and she needed someone to help as well, get her moved and situated into a new home. But she and I, kind of dated. It was more a situationship, whatever, at the time. And so I went up there to Washington and ended up staying and helped her, pretty much live her life. I mean, helped her get through a divorce, helped her move out of her home into a much smaller home. And I was still working. You know, I had a job as a director of engineering at a company in Washington. So I was doing that full time and then taking care of her, dishes, laundry, all this,
Yeah.
And then COVID hit and it was lockdown. And after a while, I mean, fast forward several years, and I was just in this routine of doing that. But then COVID hit. And so I lost my job and I was on unemployment, which was great at the time because then it allowed me to, really spend more time helping her take care of,
Right.
herself, her estate, whatever. She had a dog who had cancer. And so we kind of had to deal with that as well. Just lots of, just everyday stuff, normal things. It's not like I was out, slowly getting into the street life and like running some business of, selling whatever on the side. No, I would literally take care of this woman. And then when, right after COVID started, my landlord actually filed an eviction notice during COVID.
Wow.
She filed an eviction notice during COVID, which, and it essentially took her almost 2 years to finally evict me
Okay.
from the home, which became really uncomfortable. And all during this time, I'm locked down. My schizophrenia is kind of going off, and I'm hearing voices and just talking to myself and, which I'm sure freaks out my landlord and stuff like that because there's an attached mother-in-law garage and or apartment. And it took her about 2 years to actually finally evict me. But my mental health really suffered. And then from there, I lost everything. My landlord took everything out and just dumped it on the curb, and I had nowhere to live at the time. I was still trying. I wasn't taking care of myself, you know. I wasn't really focused on just your daily routine, just any of that stuff that you need to do. I've lived my entire life, but somehow with my mental health and that. I was just not focusing on what I needed to. But it felt good to help someone else, and take a little bit of time and focus on someone else's life because then I can ignore mine, right? Fast forward a little bit more and she ends up, she's chronic pain. So she's been on painkillers and a pain regimen for a long time. And she ends up committing suicide. Just because having to live with the pain day to day. And for me, I had been so focused over here with my ADHD. I also been diagnosed with ADHD and my schizophrenia that I just got lost.
Right.
And after that happened, I just kind of wandered around Washington. I mean, South Seattle. Not even knowing what to do, I mean, it just wasn't, my brain just wasn't processing it. And I was staying in tents and there was, in tents or in a hammock or, everything I had was getting stolen and I didn't have any money to get new stuff. So I was like, just picking stuff up off the street or at some point or another, having to steal an outfit from St. Vincent de Paul or whatever the thrift store was out there.
Yeah.
And finally, my friend, I actually ran into a friend who was from Utah, and he actually bought me a train ticket back here because I still had, my mom was still here, and my other brother who had schizophrenia was here. So I moved back here, but I mean, my mental health was just, that the mental health and awareness of your own psychology just was not really important in my family. It just wasn't something we talked about. It just wasn't, it was get a good degree. And I mean, for us at the time, it was like, go on a mission, get a good degree, get married in the temple, and then happily ever after, right? I mean, that's kind of how it was presented to me, But, when within my family, it wasn't like, focus on yourself and personal development and your own psychology and why are you doing the things that you're doing. And I just, I don't know. I don't know if it was a psychological break, midlife crisis, who knows, but I mean, I just fell apart and I just wasn't doing the things that I knew I should be doing.
Yeah.
And so my mom, whom I was staying with, and another brother who's been diagnosed with schizophrenia since, I mean, forever. And I was staying with those two, but then my dad got, I'm drawing a blank. Yeah. Dementia. Thank you. Man. Yeah, he started developing symptoms of dementia. And so my mom decided that she just needed to pack up, and they've been divorced for 20 years, but God bless her heart. You know, she went out to Missouri, moved out to Missouri to take care of him, essentially, and try to get him the help that he needs, and so that the two of them, with their finances together, can actually live something stable. But then at that point, I mean, I was pretty much just I say thrown into homelessness, but it's I essentially decided that my best course of action was to my current choice was to stay in the home in the storage unit.
Yeah.
So I dumped all of my stuff into a storage unit and just threw like a cot in the back. And my brother, who was living with me, with us, he just got rid of everything, and because he's done homelessness for, gosh, I mean, 10 years, something like that. He's done it quite extensively, apparently. But I was gone from the state of Utah for those 7 years or whatever that he was doing it, so I just wasn't aware. But he just ditched everything, took like 2 pair of clothes, and just moved up to Salt Lake, where there were some other services. But that was his way of dealing with it. And for me, it's like I'd rather stay somewhere where I'm a little bit older, and I've just figured I'd stay somewhere where I can kind of control the environment a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'm safe. I'm behind walls at night. I'm not just out running the street. I'm not having to go check in at a shelter and where drugs and things like that are obviously, I mean, they're prevalent. They're there. You can get them. It's not a problem. If you want them, you can get them. And I've seen him a couple of times since we've been doing this about 3 months.
Yeah.
He had all of his possessions, his backpack, and his cell phone stolen out of his pocket, and his backpack stolen from under his bed, from my understanding, at the shelter. So he had to go get another one, at which point that one got stolen again. And so, he's just kind of just used to this, you know. But for me, I mean, I've had a phone stolen. I same type of deal when I was in Washington. I had a phone, literally. I fell asleep in a tent. Someone unzipped the tent and stole my brand new cell phone out of my pocket.
Wow.
I mean, it was like when I met you, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have any way to communicate. I was at the library literally using their free phone.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way I had to communicate, and just, I don't use Facebook. I don't use any social media. And so it wasn't like, I mean, I'd done the homelessness a little bit in Washington, before I came back down here, but that was more like grief brain, right? I mean, I just didn't know how to process. And so this for me, honestly, it feels more like a reset. I've been working with, some of the, I've got a psychologist, a therapist, a psychiatrist, down in South Provo, and I'm working with that whole team in order to really address my mental health, and medications, to really get me on the right medications. People misunderstand, and they look at it as, oh, drug addict bad. They're just lazy. They don't want to do anything. People wouldn't use drugs if they didn't work, right? Yeah. I mean, even though it's short term, and then you get in that cycle of need more, need more, need more, need more. It works for whatever's going on in their head. Yeah. For whatever, malady or whatever, and for me specifically for ADHD, it tends to, it helps, but it's not regulated. It's not regimented. It's not a daily thing. And so then you get the compulsive behaviors and those types of things that you start to look at as addiction.
Yeah.
For myself, it's addiction is not the drug. The drug is in an addict's mind. That's a solution, but you'll still have the same problems afterwards. And so, really, getting these people in to see counselors and therapy and address it as a medication, as a medication issue, as opposed to you're a drug addict. If you look at like the DSM now, the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, it's SUDS, substance use disorder, is defined in the DSM, and it's protected just like cerebral palsy, just like someone with epilepsy, any of those things. That substance use disorder, addiction, as it's called typically, is actually protected the same way and looked at as a disability, a psychological or mental disability. And people really need to look at it that way, as opposed to vilifying it and demonizing it, and you're a bad person. And because we've all seen, all the behaviors and actions that go along with addiction, with the theft, with this, and the abuse, but that's not most of your homeless people. By and large, the homeless population that I've met, they're very docile. It's mental health issues that get someone to a point where they just give up. Like everybody's just you're not getting the right help that you need. You don't know where to turn, and so you kind of say, "Oh well, this is it," and I'm just going to be fine laying right here and falling asleep.
Yeah.
And dragging this wagon of, just stuff that really has very little meaning.
Yeah.
But you just don't, you feel like there's no direction that's the right direction to get out, And I never even thought about that before as being a possibility in my life, So that was a long answer, but kind of trying to just walk through.
Yeah. From Matt's perspective, it's really focused on getting the right mental help, right? Getting the right, working with psychiatrists and working with therapists and getting your mental health in check and medicated in some cases, right? And those areas that you would say is one of the biggest needs right now in the homeless community from
absolutely
what you've seen. Yeah. Okay. And I think I think I would have to agree with you, right? Just from my short experience, right? And just working with homeless people on the streets and interviewing them and getting their stories, I think a lot of their perspective, and they address it, right? Like, my mental health needs help. I need therapy. I need help. I need counseling, and I need help getting on the right path, right? And that's a big aspect. And I think people need to do more, right? To help get the homeless population access to those resources and ensure that they have consistent support, right? So that they can be further enabled to change their situation, right? That's a big thing I'm very pro, is just enabling people to get out of their situation, right? I think a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are very self-motivated, right? They want what they want in life. They have goals, they have dreams, they have aspirations, and a lot of times they just need a lift. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just need help getting getting on the path that you want to be on, right? Or being able to just move along somewhere or in some direction is sometimes where people get stuck. And a lot of times that's from mental health, from my understanding. It seems like that's something that you've experienced maybe firsthand and are seeing secondhand.
It really is. I mean, even for myself, it was like, I've got a degree. I could go back and I could go do work. I could do computers. But it's all things just like combined. And really it was a person going, okay, I'm right here, I'm not going anywhere, and providing, I guess, it's really an emotional support, at least, for myself, that really kind of helps you get to a point where you're even, for me, at least, as a homeless person, I don't trust anybody. Someone tells me something, I will probably just ignore it.
Yeah.
And make sure that I keep that relationship, at least if it's on to as short as possible. It's just kind of what I've done to keep myself safe, to insulate myself. I got in the storage unit by 10 p.m., and locked down and away and then I'm away from, those these influences and to try and keep my own sanity, but it felt like any direction I turned, it was just like a stumbling block. It was like, yeah, the services were there. Yeah, I could go get some food. Yeah, I could go this, but then it's just a single male in, at least in Utah County. There aren't services for you.
Mm.
I've called around all the different places that supposedly provide housing and such, and do you have a wife? No. Do you have a kid? No. So you're just a single male. I'm sorry, we don't have services for you. So you're just kind of stuck. You can go to the Food and Care Coalition and they'll give you a free sleeping bag. But that's really about the extent. You can get a shower. They'll give you some meals and stuff like that. They'll do counseling. They're absolutely wonderful down there, actually. But at the same time, I mean, you've got just the day-to-day living takes so much energy and time that it seems like you can only get one or two things done a day, and then if you throw, which I see a lot in the homeless, it's just ADHD and not being able to focus or anything like that. And drugs drugs obviously, affect that as well, but they're just not able to complete an entire task, and so it's like, and it becomes almost hopeless because it's like you're just shooting it, you're playing duck hunt. There's nothing on the screen, So
so let's dive in a little more to that then. Kind of the day-to-day of homelessness. Sounds like you had a run-in with it, and where you said you called it kind of like more grief, right? Grief walking, or whatever you referred to it as when you were in Washington, and then now you're here. I mean, you have, I guess, a physical roof over your head, right? But you're not in a home, right? And so, I mean, what's, from your perspective, like the day-to-day of homelessness? You said some people can't get a lot of things done, but what does that actually look like? What does the food access look like? What does the getting clothes and resources look like? What is, what do the days look like? What do the nights look like? And that's for you and just for the homeless community that you have kind of been integrated into through this process, right?
Yeah. And, I can only speak for myself. I've been around other people and kind of spent and seen what they do. But for myself, it's wake up whenever I feel like it.
Yeah.
And really it's, just the basics. You can talk about Maslow's hierarchy and you've got the basics of what? Food, shelter, sex, and that's about it, I think, on the bottom level. And as a homeless person, you're not getting much of the sex. So it's food and shelter. Those are your two things. Yeah. And then I think for most, or for a lot of homeless people, it's, that's supplanted with drugs, But without having money, you're either scrounging. I mean, so you see people who have routes who will go from garbage can to garbage because people throw stuff away. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, even this sweater right here, like I pulled this out of a dumpster and it was brand new, with tags on it and everything.
Wow.
Which, down in Provo, which honestly I believe was done intentionally.
Okay.
Because I think that there are some good people out there down, especially in Provo, doing things like that because they recognize the homeless community and that it exists. But I've also seen the other side of it where, I mean, it's also been demonized, and we don't want homeless equals drug addict and all the problems, which just isn't the case. Usually that's a completely different set of people who are causing those problems, who have roofs over their heads and cars and stuff like that. It's not the homeless community that's causing it. But just day to day, it's literally just getting those things. I know people who steal. I know people who go and just swap out clothes. I know people who like myself, who have a storage unit, who will go back and change out clothes and things like that. There's places like the Food and Care Coalition, and according to my brother, the shelter up in Salt Lake, they'll offer some clothes, some clothing and very minimal things like that. That you can ask for, shoes, those types of things. But I haven't had to really do that. I had a lot, I kept all my things. And so I didn't, want to have to deal with all of that, because if you need something as a homeless person, it takes you an entire day to go out and find it or get it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if there's just one thing that you need, whatever it might be, but then you get rid of it because it's more weight to carry. It's something else you have to keep track of. And just losing things is just part of the whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so you get rid of it, but then you have to go redo that all over. And I see this over and over and over again because they'll just ditch it. And then they'll have to go get another one, and then they'll ditch it, and they'll have to go. And it's like, why didn't you just keep the last one, you know? But I get it. On the same token, is a lot of homeless people literally just go with the one backpack and what's on their back, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just a little bit more residential than that.
Yeah. And I've been to your unit, right? You
Yeah.
showed me you're all organized. You got everything ready. You still have some clothes in a clothes rack, and you keep things organized. You're telling me all the time. I ask you, hey, what are you up to, Matt? Oh, just reorganizing my stuff in my unit. It's one of the things I know you keep busy with, and you're a very organized person, which has been cool to see that you've kept up with that amidst hard circumstances. So, I mean, before we kind of go talk about you and your future and things we've done together, I'd like kind of one question that I still have, and I think that viewers should hear your response to is, we talked about the mental health, we talked about these things, but if you're just a person, maybe you don't stand out in a crowd, but you are, you have a house over your head and you're a working individual, like what would you say to most of the people, our viewers, that you think would make a difference in how they view homelessness and how they can get involved from your perspective?
That's a good question, because I'm on this side of it, being homeless myself. But I mean, one of the things that I've specifically done is, I'm not a very property focused or centric person. I mean, it's stuff. It'll, when I'm gone from this world, I'm going in the same, bare naked state that I came into it in. And so that's just stuff. I mean, I've given away 2 bicycles to other homeless people. One was a woman who got her bicycle stolen, and another was a kid who has mental health issues, and his mom kicked him out because he's dealing with pain medication that he didn't even understand what chronic pain was, and how it would affect his life, and his mom doesn't understand it either. And so he was just out homeless for the first time, 24 years old or something like that. And so I literally went back to my storage locker, and I pulled out a bunch of clothes. I pulled out a sleeping bag, pulled out a bike, and just to set him up. So because he literally just had his clothes were just absolutely filthy, I mean, just a couple weeks old, and he just had nothing, and it's like, no one cares, I mean, it's not like I'm going on a date later or anything like that, so it doesn't matter. But I just wanted to make sure that he at least had something, and get some things together for him to start, and get him a bike lock and stuff like that. It's little things like that help people. A lot of people will try and give, here's money, here's money, here's money. Most homeless people are on food stamps. They're not starving. And I hate to say that, and it's probably a little bit taboo and whatever, but I mean, I've seen homeless people all over the place, who will literally trade their food stamp card for drugs. He'll literally give it and there you go, food stamp card, and I get drugs, and so it's not even so much, like cash or anything like that. It's what do they need? What's the next step that they need to, and don't look to be in a home and have that over their head, and have a job and be sober and a car and a this and a that. Just what's the next step for them, and how can you facilitate that in a way that doesn't necessarily make them feel like, no, in that position, you still don't really get used to just accepting help from everyone. It's really humbling. And anytime somebody helps me with anything, it's just absolutely, I feel gratitude. I mean, just 3 days ago, I think I was telling you about this, how I was in the laundromat, and, I think I only had like $10 or something like that on me. And so I was like, okay, I can only do one load, I'll just get my one load done and take the rest of my stuff home with me, or home to my storage unit with me. And while I was paying attention to other things, kind of organizing, folding, and figuring out how to store the dirty clothes next to the clean clothes as soon as they got out. When I went over to pull out my wash, someone had clearly, when I wasn't looking, opened the lid and dropped a $20 bill in there. I mean, it was clear that I had my bike with me, I had my bike trailer, and I had, a big tote that was just full of, 2 months worth of dirty clothes. And someone had obviously just lit and dry, because the bill was completely dry. All the clothes are wet and everything is finished. It's done its thing, but the bill is completely dry.
Wow.
And so, it's little things like that, like recognizing the need, a cell phone, it's just these little things that people take for granted because, especially when you're in an affluent society, where for most people, you're living clear up here on Maslow's hierarchy where you should be able to do some philanthropy, some anything like that.
Yeah.
As opposed to down at the bottom where, just don't even have the shelter and the food becomes an issue, with some of Trump's new mandates and stuff like that. My food stamps got cut. And so now it's like, okay, I've got to travel, clear down to South Provo from where I am to get meals every day. And so if I do that 3 times, that's like 70% of my day right there,
Yeah.
And so what am I doing with the rest of it? I want to get on housing. That's great if you can be homeless and wait for 3 years. I don't know what the wait list is like now, but my brother's on the list, but he's still like a year out from getting housing. So I don't even know what he's gonna do.
Yeah.
But where do okay, I can go get a job. That's great, but I can't shower every day. I tried to do it in Washington. I got a job at Harbor Freight just to see where my mental health was and if I could, and I did great. I'm psychologically astute. I'm aware. I'm a good worker, and I did great. But it only lasted so long because I couldn't shower. I couldn't take care of my mental health. I didn't have the quiet, the solitude, any of these things that you just take for granted. Just being in a home where you go home, you sit down, and you just don't get that. It's like, where can I put my tent or my hammock that's hidden enough that not only will other people not mess with me, other homeless people won't steal my things, and the police won't harass me.
Yeah.
Because that's a big one. In the past week or two, I've been stopped 8 times by police for no reason. I'm doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
The light was out on the back of my bike. And it's just like, and they stop me because they want to do a warrant check. They want, and it's almost to the point where they're criminalizing the act of being homeless. Because I asked them, I said, where can I stay? I said, if I can't stay here, I don't like to stay in the storage unit all the time because that, I don't want, I want to just, and cabin fever, I guess. Let's just chalk it up to that.
Makes sense.
And so, where can I, and he's like, well, you can go down to the lake. There's a camping ground down there. That's how much a day? $25, $35 or whatever it is. And he says, oh, well, you can go up the canyon. You got to pet. You've got to go out a ways. 5, 10 miles, whatever it is. But you can go up the canyon and camp. And it's like, how does that help? Where are my services? All in South Provo. So that's the exact opposite way, right? And then you can't even carrying food up there. It just adds a whole new level of problems that, at least being down here and living under a bridge, which I know a lot of people down here in Provo that live under bridges.
Yeah.
They build little secret caves and stuff like that. It's crazy how inventive they get. It's like, if you spent that fraction of amount of time that you spent doing that, like creating that thing, working towards something, to actually progress. High functioning mentally people, but their mental health is just all over the place.
Right.
And so anyway, I got this job and I couldn't do it. I lasted like 2 weeks. It was, and before I skipped, my schizophrenia, I'm hearing voices and they're telling me all kinds of things. And I'm just like, I just can't even, it was just too much, almost to the point of like agoraphobia, just being afraid of being around people. And so I knew at that point, it was like, I'm going to have to find some other way, to deal with this. And so, but really enrolling in originally it was sound behavioral health. They do sort of a holistic type approach, the same way that the Food and Care Coalition does down
Yeah.
with Wasatch down in South Provo, down in East Bay, and they have your primary care physician on hand. You can have your mail sent there, so if you need IDs, they'll help you get IDs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They have a therapist, they've got psychologists, they've got psychiatrists, they've got providers, so they'll do all of your mental health stuff. They provide 3 meals a day plus your physical health stuff. They do it all right there.
Yeah.
And then you can even, rent a shower once a day or
Yeah.
once a day or every other day or twice a week or something like that. So at least you're somewhat clean. But I mean, even with that schedule, holding a job to get to the point where you can save up enough money to get that first step where you're like, I have shelter. I'm not on the bottom level of, just struggling to get through Maslow's, up to where, I can even think about having a job and doing hobbies or anything
Yeah.
fun, it just felt impossible. It feels like, talk about turning, molehills into mountains
Yeah.
is literally how it feels, what felt so simple and so easy to do before. My last job 3 years ago, I was a director of engineering at a firm in Washington, and it was just that quick, with COVID and my mental health, and then some other things, and then her death and the grief and the trauma that came from that, and just can happen to anyone at any time.
Yeah.
Most Americans can't cover, a $2,000 accidental, bill that comes up, and so you're 2 paychecks away from, being right where
Right.
I am. Donating plasma to get your $100 to make sure that you've still got your storage unit over your head.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.